Hey everybody, it's Rebecca Johnson of Supergirl Radio. I'm just getting the live stream started here so that we start on time and are punctual. So everyone knows we are going to be going live tonight. So we are going to be discussing Red Faced, which is a Supergirl season 1, episode 6. So we are continuing our Supergirl Radio rewind. And in advance, I would like to apologize for not being as organized as I would like. We're going to have to cover some news next time around because I didn't get a chance to get to it this week because I'm still recovering from Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia. I thought I would have time enough to put the doc together. But as it stands, I'm barely getting the doc together. We may not even have snap judgments. Unless you have some snap judgments in the live chat, feel free to drop those in and we will make some snap judgments. But as of right now, I don't have any snap judgments. If you think of any, please let us know. But I I would like to apologize in advance for not having the Google Doc as pristine as I normally do. Things have been a little nuts, and I'm trying to get my life back in order after Dragon Con this past weekend. So I think we're mostly prepared in that regard, but for some of the things that we normally have in a Supergirl Radio episode, I did not get a chance to add them. So we'll talk about some news related to the show and related to Melissa Benoist's new show and related to some Dreamer stuff that got announced. So we'll talk about all that stuff next time around in our next episode. So we don't have that together for this week. I barely got out the Google Doc to Morgan, so that's what happens. I really should take the Tuesday after Dragon Con off because it's just it's almost a wasted day because it's just too much to recover from. I guess I'm getting too old to stay up late and get up early and not sleep. That seems like it gets harder with age. When when I was in college, it was not a big deal. You just got up and went after a few hours sleep. But the more you age and mature in your age, it gets a little more difficult to do that. So so just confessing that the recovery time from Dragon Con takes a little longer in my old age. Yeah, so Triple X is kind of hinting at some of the stuff that we'll be covering next time around, since Rebecca didn't get a chance to get all that stuff put together in the doc. So we'll talk about Dreamer and Fortnite next time around when we get together. Brian says, I feel your pain. Yeah, I'm an old lady now. It's harder to recover from these things. So that is the thing. And New Rachel says my sleep schedule was awful in college. I remember there was a time when my roommate, my freshman year of college, she stayed out all night. I don't know. I assume she was studying. We'll just say that she was studying. And then I saw her like I was getting up and going to class the next morning, and she waltzed in at like 7 o'clock, and I was like, "Where have you been?" And then she changed and went to class. So that's college for you, is that you don't get a lot of sleep and things get turned around in a hurry. So nobody sleeps in college. I'm convinced of that. So get get sleep while you can. Okay, I see Morgan down there. We'll see if Morgan got any sleep in college. We'll see what happened there. So Morgan, what was your sleep schedule like when you were in college?
I slept in a lot. I did. I probably after my freshman year, I had like a 6 a.m. class in college, and I was like, you know what?
6 a.m. Good.
I'm the master of my destiny. I'm the captain of my ship. I don't need to do this to myself anymore. And so after that, I don't think I took many early morning classes, and I honestly started to feel like if I didn't know something by like 1 a.m., I was just never gonna know it. And you know what? It
You
is what it
didn't.
is. It is what it is. Let the chips have got to fall where they're gonna fall. And my roommate for all 4 years, we roomed together the entire time, was pre-med. So
Oh.
so I would be like, all right, all right, well, I'm going to go to sleep. And she'd be like, I have 7 more hours to study. And I was like, see you on the other side. I must have been great.
Yeah, I had a lot of college experiences like that where sleep just didn't happen. So that is a thing. Dr. Nicole says nobody sleeps in college, cries in PhD. Yeah, Emma says I'm in college now. I'm doing my best. Everyone should do your best. That's all you can really do.
Emma, if it's at a certain point in the night and you don't know it, just go to sleep. It's gonna be fine.
It's better if you sleep.
I'll write you a note that says Morgan says it's fine, and you can hand that to your professor. It'll mean nothing. Oh, will you write a note to Beaker? He says I'll write a note. All Beaker does is sleep. So he's really living that lifestyle. Beaker, the cords are not a toy. No. No. Let them go. Let them go. Did you see that? He was mad about it. And as he went down, he was like, no. My new toy.
I've never seen a cat just gobble up cables like that. Wow.
What a champ.
What a champ. Champion of the cable chewing. Awarded to Beaker. So that is amazing. We're really starting off this Supergirl Radio live stream. This is going great. So I was apologizing to the listeners and viewers that Dragon Con recovery is coming slower than anticipated. So we are just really going to be talking about the episode, and that's about all the time we have for. But we'll cover some news next week, so we'll get to that. And Morgan, you do have the doc.
I do.
I sent it like last minute, so
I'm in.
I just want to make sure you had it. Okay, all right. So I guess we will go ahead and officially get started, and then we will talk about Red Face. And please share your thoughts and comments in the live chat. And if you have any questions for Morgan, because this is all about Morgan's perspective on the episode. So if you have any questions, just leave them in the live chat, and we will get to them. All right. Well, we will officially get started.
Leslalar's downfall is just that eyebrow twitch that she can't help doing. Could you imagine if Hope was like, let's add that to the PowerPoint? Excuse
what
me?
Year is it?
How old am I? This is how the podcast breaks up.
This is the last episode of Supergirl Radio. You want a Kryptonian? You got one.
Is it a movie about saving Argo? The answer to that one is no. It's called Witch for a Summer! ! Where does she want to go? Ask her. Talk to her. Really commune with flat Supergirl.
Did we set the bar too high or too low?
I think we set the bar real medium.
You're an intensely adequate podcast.
Thank you. Good.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor Boardroom or Ballroom. Because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW's Supergirl TV series, or in this case, CBS's Supergirl TV series, and the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are live and wired on the Supergirl Radio Facebook page and the DCTV Podcast YouTube channel to go back in time. Since Morgan didn't review Supergirl episodes as a full-time co-host of Supergirl Radio until the episode World's Finest, which aired in March of 2016, which is a long time ago, we are revisiting the first season to get Morgan's thoughts. This week, we'll be discussing Season 1, Episode 6, titled Red Faced. Morgan, this is an episode featuring Red Tornado, which I'll be curious to pick your brain about Red Tornado and what you thought about the entry here. This is really kind of the introduction and the end of Red Tornado, but this will be something really fun to discuss. So we need to go back in time all the way to 2015, and I'll see you on the other side. I don't know if you're getting queasy from all the time
we're
traveling.
Back.
Yes.
That was quite a trip.
That was a journey. We are back in the year of our Lord 2015. And here is the official description of Red-Faced. Quote, personal and professional stress get the better of Kara when she goes too far during a training exercise against Red Tornado, a military cyborg commissioned by Lucy Lane's father, General Sam Lane, unquote. So this is an episode all about anger and people having to deal with their anger, figuring out how to deal with their anger. So Morgan, how do you think everybody did, especially Kara? What did you think about Kara and her anger issues in this episode?
I think she really worked through them in this one. I think she really addressed her anger in a healthy way. Honestly, I think some of her anger was necessary. The way that Kat was treating her in this episode was like uncool. So I really like that scene where Kat is being really nasty to her and she flips out at Kat, and then Kat's like, okay, well, you need to get to the anger behind the anger. And she's like, no, I was mad at you. Kat's like, no, Kira, you weren't mad at me. And she's like, I literally was mad at you. Like you were not being cool. And she's like, that doesn't make sense, but it's something deeper than that. It's like, maybe it's not though. Maybe she's just mad at you, Kat. Have you thought about how your actions could be impacting other people? Mayhaps. I thought that was such a good scene because I thought that they were gonna like skim right over the fact that like sometimes like when Kat's doing her girl boss thing, it's like, ooh, that's quite toxic, isn't it? And I felt like in this episode Kara got to actually be mad at Kat for being like dismissive and a little horrible to her, and I liked that when Kat tried to like sweep it under the rug, being like, I mean, I think it's deeper. She's like, or maybe it had something to do with your actions. Kat's like, that doesn't compute. It has to be a deeper trauma. But yeah, no, I really liked the way that this episode like dealt with Kara's emotions and her anger, which, you know, I think was pretty justified. She's going through a lot right now, but also like when she finally does, spoiler alert, blow up Red Tornado, I almost called him Red Tomato, and I was like, that's not right.
That's a different cyborg.
Tomatoes are red, but so is
wonder what Red Tomato's power would be.
Red Tomato.
Just shooting like, ketchup everywhere.
Yeah, it's just like excellent on a BLT. But yeah, when she kind of goes back and really deals with some of her like foundational trauma of losing her parents and losing her home, and how she feels even though she's got a a lot of friends, and she's got a job that is honestly very medium to her, and a family here. She still feels out of place. She still feels like, she's never going to get to have the normal life that other people can have, because she's, a Kryptonian. She's like one step sort of out of her life. And I thought it was really cool that they like dove into that for her. This thought that she she's about to tell James and she's mad because he and Lucy are an item, and then very, very impressively pivots.
Yeah, she recovers for that.
I was like, "Woo, she recovered that fast." But I think what she dove into, even though it was a little bit of a sidestep of the truth, was that like she's afraid she's not going to get to have that kind of relationship, the person who's going to be her perfect partner at game night. And I thought that was really understandable. I think, for where Supergirl is, and kind of any young adult is kind of struggling, if you're single and you're wondering like, when's it going to happen for me? I think that's a really understandable place to be, even if you're not a superhero.
Yeah, I really like the way that the show explored Kara's anger issues and really got into the heart of Kara's trauma from Krypton's destruction and being sent off by herself, and of course getting stuck in the Phantom Zone and losing her family and losing all of her culture and her people and her planet. And that's a big deal.
Kind of a big one.
That's a big deal. So Kara, even if she has an adoptive family and she's got a semi-okay job and she's got friends, it would still be something that I would imagine that would stay with her and always affect her in some way. And so I like that the show made an effort to dig into that with Kara. And I think it did it in such a way that it was playing on multiple levels. It was about Krypton. It was about James and Lucy. It was about Kat. All these parts of Kara's life are kind of building up and coming to a crescendo in the episode. And I think they handled it really well. Even smartly having her, go boxing with James, but for Kara, she has to hit an old beat up car, because that's the thing that would give her the most sort of boxing reflex, I guess. So I really like that attention to detail, that Kara can't just go take a kickboxing class. She has to beat up an old car.
Bunsen agrees.
Are the lab cats chiming in with their thoughts?
He is. He has a lot of feelings. Sometimes at night he will walk around with his toy in his mouth, like meowing and kind of crying plaintively. I found out that that's because like sometimes they'll just drop the toy off to you. It's like they don't trust me to like hunt, and he's afraid I might starve. So he's like basically bringing me.
He's providing for you.
He's providing for me, which is it's nice
really
of him.
sweet.
He does get a little loud though sometimes when he's telling me, he's giving me the business about why can't I provide for myself, Well,
that's really thoughtful that he's just looking out for you. That's great. Well, and to be fair to Kat, who was giving Kara some, well, even to be fair to all of the people who were giving Kara a little bit of a rough time, everybody was dealing with their own things. For example, Kat was dealing with some anger issues of her own with her mother. So we did get to meet Kat's mother in this episode. And just to go back to our last Supergirl Radio Rewind, where we're all kind of wondering and trying to remember what Kat's mother did as a career. That's explained in this episode, where she talks about how she's an editor, a book editor, and hangs out with famous people that that invite her to parties that Kat's not invited to. So Morgan, what did you think about
of things? I've actually reminded me of a documentary I've never seen but have heard of. But there's apparently a documentary about Anna Wintour, which I feel like this was probably borrowing pretty liberally from, which is about, if you don't know, if you're not obsessed with fashion, like myself and Lena, Anna Wintour is the longtime editor of Vogue, also famously the person that The Devil Wears Prada was written about. So a gem. But there was some documentary about her, and it's all about how, and a lot of it was about apparently that her family's not that impressed by her. They all have these kind of snootier jobs or whatever, and they think that what she does is kind of unserious. Apparently, again, I've never seen the documentary, so I could be wrong based on the reviews I read. But it felt very much like Cat Grant herself feels a little bit Anna Wintour-esque, a little bit Devil Wears Prada-y. She's just gonna throw a jacket at you and hope you catch it, or it's gonna go on your head. She's wants you to, order her a steak and tell you about cerulean blue. So
wants you to go get unpublished manuscripts of Harry Potter.
Exactly, for her children. So to me, it felt very much like kind of a piece of that. And then the other thing it reminded me of, and I don't know if you've watched it at all, it's on our good friend HBO Max. So
love HBO
no
Max.
Guarantees it's still up, but could be gone. But they have a show called Julia that's about Julia Child, the sort of cooking personality.
Yes.
And her book editor worked for this famous woman editor in New York, and this editor, who's played, by the way, and you will not guess, by Judith Light.
Dame Judith Light?
Dame Judith Light, in fact, plays the book editor, and she's always on Julia's editor about why are you spending all this time editing cookbooks? Julia's not that big of a deal. You should be editing the greats of literature. And it's Julia Childs is the best. What are you doing? What are you talking about, Dame Judith? And it very much reminded me of that, where she's talking to Kat, and she's oh, it's cute what you have here, but I'm off to talk to Toni Morrison. And I think there was also a shade on Margaret Atwood, which I thought was very funny.
Yes, there was.
she hasn't gotten an award. And she's what could you possibly talk to with these literary luminaries? And it's oh man, what a snob.
Yeah, I think this is before Kat talks about doing hot yoga with Bernie Sanders. I don't know why. I don't know why that one always sticks in my brain. I think it's the visual of that.
The visual is something
that has always that.
I would just imagine him being
Kat's
sitting there with the mittens at hot yoga.
Everybody else is sweating, and he's just
not impressed.
So Kat has messed around with some really famous people. So the fact that her mom dismissed her, even though she's, had all of these celebrity encounters, as we, later find out, throughout the rest of the season, it shows that her mother is a little snootier than even we see with Kat. So it's really sad for me to see Kat go through that, because you can see that it really bothers her that her mother is downplaying all of her successes and everything that she's accomplished. And I can imagine that would be something that she would then take out on Kara, or Kira in this case. But I did really like their scenes in this episode. And I think season 1 was so good about that, having those Kara, Kat mentor-mentee scenes that were always so good, because it always felt like Kara learned something and Kat grew as a character. So I think it was not just for Kat, it was not just for Kara. They mutually benefited from those scenes together, and I just always really like those scenes.
Yeah, it felt like we were always peeling back the layers of one of those two characters when they were in scenes together, especially when they were those one-on-ones, when Kat takes her to the bar and they have a lot of, Kat has a scary amount of martinis, which Kara then knows the next day that she's going to have to give her aspirin, which I love. She comes in with the aspirin, she understands. and Kat turning around in her chair like a Inspector Gadget villain.
Oh my gosh,
with the
so good.
sunglasses on is so funny.
So good. Just to stop, do we need to check on Bunsen? Is he?
Oh, I think he's fine. Hey, bud.
Okay,
Hi.
so he's
Hi,
not.
friend.
Okay.
He's chill.
He's not after the light. Okay. Is
No, not yet.
okay.
That's probably for later.
Okay, all right. I'll try to keep an eye on it.
Light
for you.
watch.
Yeah, so Kat is dealing with some anger issues of her own. Then James, I think, is also dealing with some anger issues, having to go to dinner with and interact with Lucy's father, General Sam Lane, who we get introduced to in this episode. So, Morgan, what did you think about this version of General Lane? Because there's a different General Lane on Superman and Lois, because that's a completely different
A lot of like
thing.
not great parents in this. Hi, buddy. What's going on here? What's going on? Could we take a step back from me? From me, please? Oh my God. I don't know what's happening with him. Watson's lost it. Yeah, I feel like there, a lot of bad parents in this one. General Lane was not the best here. He doesn't think that James is good enough for Lucy based on what exactly? Like didn't he win some awards for his photography?
I think he won a Pulitzer for that Superman photo.
Yeah.
But I think the anger behind General Lane's anger is that he did not like that James hung around with Superman and had super friends. So I think that was what he used as his way of determining that he was not good enough for Lucy, which I've always found that refreshing that was the reason that he didn't like James, because at some point in the episode, even when I rewatch it, I always sort of think he's going to be like, I don't like you because you're black, or something like it's going to be a race card thing. And really, it's not the race card. It's, I just don't think you're good enough for my daughter. Like, I just don't like the people you hang around with. I thought that was actually really refreshing, because they could have gone that easy way of causing some dramatic tension between those characters, but they actually made it more about James's character and the folks that James surrounded himself with, and not necessarily about what he looked like or where he was from. It was more about his character. So I always thought that was actually a surprising choice. So both General Lane, I think, is dealing with some anger, and James are dealing with some anger, and then they get angry kind of together.
They're not happy together. Yeah, I agree with that. I like that James gets to talk about, as a black man, he can't really like express his anger just the same way that Kara talks about. Like, as a girl, it's frowned on for her to express hers. But yeah, I appreciated that the reason that General Lane doesn't like Jimmy really has more to do with the company he keeps. Really, he doesn't like that he's friends with Superman. He doesn't like that he's friends with Supergirl. He doesn't trust aliens. He doesn't sort of trust the superheroes that are flying around. I thought that was really interesting, because this is early in the series and we hadn't really seen that perspective so far. It's more like, oh, your cousin's more famous than you, not like, oh, we don't really trust these super powered beings. The only perspective we get on that really so far is Maxwell Lord, and who knows what he's up to ever.
Except for building trains.
He's an enigma. He's like, okay, I'll tell you a thing that's kind of obvious, but only if you have dinner with me. Cool, I guess. I mean, I bet your food's pretty good. You're super rich. But yeah, I was like, I didn't blame Kara for being mad in this episode, because I was about to lose it just watching it, where General Lane is like, he comes in, he's like, you have to fight my robot. And it's like, that's a weird request, sir, but fine. That's what you want. I've got a note from the president who says, if you don't fight my robot, you're in trouble. It's like,
not just a note, Morgan, an executive order.
An executive order, which is exactly how those work.
We've talked extensively about executive orders
of the president. It's nice to know that, like, it goes back this far, that they just do not understand how executive orders work or what you would use it for. I want you, one individual person, to do a thing for me from the desk of the president. Not sure that's how it works. Okay, but okay, whatever you guys want, whatever you need. Yeah, so she's like, fine, I'll fight your stupid rock'em sock'em robot. And then she fights the robot. She beats the robot. The robot flies off, turns into like a killing machine. That seems like a flaw in the design of the robot. Not that it's her fault. I just like the internal logic to me really bothered me because I was like, but you want her to fight the robot.
Right.
She's Supergirl. So
Yeah.
like she's gonna win. You must in your heart of hearts know that she's gonna win. Like if Supergirl can't take a robot, what are we all here for? Right? What are we all even doing here? So she's gonna win. And then like you're mad that like all that R&D went down the drain. You made her fight the robot. You didn't tell her, hey, wait, fight the robot, but not in a way that's gonna like waste our development dollars, right? You just said fight the robot. What if she had just frozen the entire robot and just smashed him into little tiny pieces? What about all your money now? At least the robot was mostly intact. When he
just
flew
missing an
off
arm
into the air to become a killing machine.
Mhm.
And also, why does he have programming to make him become a killing machine? That seems like a design flaw as well.
He was part of the U.S. military. So
That's true. But I feel like the first thing shouldn't be like, somebody messed up our robot. Now he will kill everyone. Wait a minute.
escalated quickly.
Everyone, not specific targets. This again seems like a design flaw. He's out in the field with the soldiers and somebody like pisses off a red tornado. Everyone's dead. You can't even tell a joke to that red guy.
Mm-mm.
He does not take it well, they say. But yeah, the whole thing was like so crazy. Like she did what they like letter of the law, what they wanted her to do. Can you beat this robot? Of course she can. She's Supergirl. She beats the robot. He flies off and they're like, now you've endangered everyone. Excuse me, sir. How?
You invited me here.
You showed me an executive order that was either wrong or fake, and I did the thing. What do you want from me? I'm getting hot on her behalf.
That's a really good point. Yeah, one of the things I really liked about the Red Tornado stuff is that Kara, I guess, is, she's having issues with the Lucy aspect of the episode. And at one point at game night, which I think this is the first game night on Supergirl, I believe.
I think so,
this
yeah.
seems 6 episodes in, we get our first game night, which would be a thing that would continue on throughout the series. They would have lots of game nights. And so at the game night, Lucy announces to everyone in the room that she's not really that impressed with Supergirl. She met Supergirl, not impressed, doesn't think much of her. And so then when Supergirl has to be around Lucy in her DEO part of her life, then she's really trying to impress or at least show off in front of Lucy to make her change her mind, or at least to make herself feel a little better, because I think she has a little anger with the Lucy situation.
Just a tiny bit.
So I liked that all converged, like all of these storylines. This is a great example of the show doing thematic things well. Later on in the show, if we time traveled to the future, there would be words of the episode, and they would just say the word over and over again until you got hit over and over and in the head with the word. But here they didn't have to do that because they demonstrated it through all the storylines and made them all connect. And so I thought the writing here was really good because all of it sort of went together. And I think even with Red Tornado going crazy, maybe Red Tornado had some anger issues of his own, even though he was mostly a robotic cybernetic being who then became sentient. So maybe once he became sentient, then he had some anger issues.
I'm sad we didn't like deep dive into Red Tornado. What's his deal? What's he angry about? He's like, father. When they kill his creator, he's like,
yes.
No. But yeah, well, it's interesting to me too, because I don't know anything about Red Tornado. And when I first watched this episode, I was just like, cool, this guy's red. That's neat. And I knew nothing, but I've since watched a little bit of Young Justice, where he's like a character who's sort of helping out the younger superhero kids in the show.
Yeah, he's a
So-
hero.
Yeah, and so when I first started watching that, I was like, this guy? Didn't Supergirl blow him up with her heat vision? Don't I remember that? So I thought it was interesting, like going back now and knowing he's kind of a more prominent character. He's been in the Justice League before. That like they were like, yeah, we're gonna have Red Tornado and he's gonna be a villain. You're like, yeah, cool, interesting redemption storyline for him, perhaps. And you're like, no, Supergirl's just gonna blow him up, like straight up.
Just
Episode 6.
sentient being. She's just gonna kill him.
Goodbye. Yeah, I was like, oh, goodbye, Red Tornado, I guess. R.I.P. I feel like they could have like he could have once again at the end of the episode like shot up into the air and he's like goodbye, and like you're like oh, what happened to Red Tornado? And then like seasons later he could have popped back up, and that would have, I think, been fun for everyone to be like, oh my god, Red Tornado. And he's like, yeah, I went to Hawaii. I had a lot of anger, it turned out, a lot of anger issues. And like he could have had like a whole storyline about how he like dealt with his anger issues. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he did some surfing. Is it dangerous for a robot? Almost definitely. But he lives on the edge. And he's like, once I caught my first wave, man, everything locked into place. He's like, he's back and he's ready to like do superhero stuff now. He feels bad about his previous actions.
Would it be dangerous for Red Tornado to be out on the waves?
I
Would
feel
he
like,
cause
yeah,
would
right?
he call it a hurricane?
He sure could, yeah. But or could he make himself the perfect wave? They're like, wow, this like red guy has been taking the surfing scene by storm. And like Supergirl, Kara like turns the page and she's like, why do I feel like I know that guy? and it's just Red Tornado, but he's got like a floppy hat on and some sunglasses.
It's like some like Hawaiian shorts.
Like a puka shell necklace. She's like, I don't know. I just feel like I know him. I don't know. That's so
He
weird.
looks so familiar.
So familiar. I can't place him though. Man, that guy got sunburned. This
That
would be
is-
my spin-off.
I really
Red
want to see
Tornado
that show.
hang 10 exclamation point. It would have been great. I'm just saying that we missed a whole character journey for him, and I'm a little sad about it.
Instead of killing him, you could just make him a surfer champion.
Exactly. Just like living that laid back surf lifestyle. I think that would have helped with his anger a lot.
Writing is not hard, it turns out.
I got tons of ideas.
So whenever we write a Red Tornado comic book story,
Yes.
that's
We've
what we're doing. That
DC, call us. We've got so many ideas. We've got some good concepts for Red Tornado.
They'd be flying off the shelf. Yeah, so Red Tornado is introduced in this episode and then is seen no more after Supergirl destroys him with her heat vision. And that's a really big moment in the episode. This is Kara or you know, Supergirl. She's got her super suit on, but it's really Kara dealing with her anger and using the heat vision and her fight against Red Tornado to get that anger out. So what do you think about the twist ending there where Kara knocks over a piece of glass and she's bleeding?
Oh, I didn't see that one coming. Because I forgot episode orders and stuff like that. So I was like, whoa, wait, what? And she's like, the way that she just stares at it like, oh, I can't believe that I'm bleeding. I mean, what a good cliffhanger to leave you off on for the next episode. Like, that makes me want to just go like, okay, next episode, please. Let's just go right into the next one. But like, we had to wait a whole week for that. We had to like really like hold tight for that next episode.
Yeah, because this was pretty early on. This is the introduction of the solar flare in the Supergirl universe. But I think if I remember correctly, during the time of this episode airing back in 2015, solar flares in the comics were relatively new. And so this was a new concept, relatively new concept that was now introduced on the Supergirl TV series. And so this is a great way to put it in there, because it did kind of make you go, what? Why would she be bleeding? Nothing happened to her. She didn't come into contact with kryptonite. There was no magic. But it turns out if you use your heat vision too hard, you're going to solar flare, and that's going to be a problem for you, and you're going to lose all of your abilities. So I think six episodes in, and they're really testing Supergirl and really giving her a big challenge. And so I always thought that was really cool that they did that so early on. They could have waited until the season finale, but here they are, season 1, episode 6, and she's lost her powers.
I've been shown up a little bit by the chat. So Hagel says,
okay.
In the Earth X crossover, Red Tornado was a hero, which I don't remember, if I'm being honest, but the Earth X crossover was a long time ago. He also says Red Tornado also pops randomly in Supergirl season 6 during the final battle with Lex. Again, no memories, but I'll take your word for it. There were lizard people there, and
I do remember Red Tornado showing up at the end, because Red Tornado comes in, I think, with Overgirl and some other villains of the past. So I guess Red Tornado, after Crisis, has now returned somehow and is a villain again. This would have been the opportunity to show him as the surfer hero that we all know.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been the right time to do it.
He could have come in like, "Cowabunga, dudes!" It's your good friend Red Tornado. And Miss Fiction Fanatic said also that he does pop up on Crisis on Earth X. So I don't remember that. I don't really remember his storyline or like how he popped up on Crisis on Earth X, because it's been so long. But
should we do a rewind of all the crossovers? Because I feel like we've both forgotten some.
I've forgotten a lot of them. And then other Crisis made a lot of them like not even real.
Yeah, made it a lot more confusing. And I guess speaking of a crisis and things, a thing that somebody might have forgotten. Let's talk about Alex and what she learns about in regards to her father in this episode. So this is the start of Alex's journey to learning what really happened to Jeremiah Danvers.
And then ultimately not caring about it very much.
So Morgan, what did you think about the big revelation here that Hank Henshaw had something to do with Jeremiah's demise?
I thought it was like really well done. It also kind of reminded me of the conversation that we were having with, I think, the last episode about how the episodes were ultimately kind of aired out of order, because I'd kind of forgotten that in the Thanksgiving episode, I think that's when they find out that their mom knows or had heard of Hank Henshaw and was like, yeah, Hank Henshaw was the one who recruited your father to work at the DEO. And then like the next episode we get, there's no mention of it. Everyone's cool. James and Lucy are wondering, should we date again? Last week they were at Thanksgiving together. Which apparently, now that we know, that Thanksgiving had to be pretty terrible, unless it was maybe with her like mom's side of the family. Are they divorced?
Maybe.
Who knows? But that Thanksgiving, probably not James's favorite, especially since they were maybe not together yet, which is a weird thing.
Oh, do you think that the General Lane, now that we're talking about the episode order, do you think something happened during Thanksgiving with General Lane? Or do you think, or do you think General Lane didn't? He kind of seemed like he didn't know it in Red Faced.
Yeah,
that they were together.
He kind of seemed surprised. He was like, I think he knew that they were together, but he was more like, "Oh, I'm surprised you're still together," which doesn't speak to me of somebody who just spent Thanksgiving with somebody else.
So maybe General Lane wasn't at Thanksgiving.
Maybe it wasn't at Thanksgiving. I want to know, like, what happened to Mrs. General Lane? Are they divorced? Maybe they were with the mom side of the family for that. I can't imagine. Why would you divorce him? He seems like a gem. But yeah, like the episode order really kind of struck out to me in this one, because suddenly it's like, remember that thing that like, as Alex is like, I have to know what happened to my dad. And I was like, last week you didn't hadn't even mentioned him. Which again, they were just preparing you for what was going to happen later in the show.
Yeah, that's going to be real consistent later on.
Later on, I would expect this from Alex Danvers, but early on, she seemed to really care about what was going on with Jeremiah. She's like, I will avenge you, Father. And he's like, actually, I'm alive. She's like, nah, I'm good. It's cool.
And then he died anyway.
And then she's like, I will avenge you again. Never mind. But yeah, like I really needed that like previously on Supergirl thing in the beginning of the episode, because that's when they kind of like, they're like, oh, Eliza said that like Jeremiah went to work for Hank Henshaw, and I was like, she did? So yeah, I feel like again, like because they had to shuffle the episode order, it doesn't naturally make as much sense as it would if this episode had come directly after the Thanksgiving episode. I think that would have like kept the momentum up. I think like their original order was really building the momentum and building like bit by bit building that Hank storyline really well. They just had to like shuffle things around, so it didn't make as much sense. But yeah, in this one, I definitely, again, like, I know what we're driving to, but back when I was first watching the show, I was like, that Hank seems like a bad dude. Like, what's he got going on? Like, what's he planning with his red eyes?
Yeah, and they tease the I believe South America storyline, because they tease the story with Jeremiah and Martian Manhunter that we will see later on in the season. So it again goes back to the the realization they planned this. It's almost like they thought this through, that they planned all of this out. Which is not something I'm used to as a Supergirl TV series
not really
fan.
Now.
So to go back in season 1 and really get to see that they have this whole season long arc planned for these characters, and they're so prepared ahead of time that they can tease it. I mean, probably 10, 11 episodes out. I mean, they're teasing it pretty early before they even do that reveal in that storyline. So it's going back in season 1 really reminds me that the show was so much more structured and was so much more well thought out than some of the later seasons of the series. And it just, going back and rewatching it is impressive.
Yeah, it felt like they really had plotted it out in a really nice way, where they were like, okay, this is where we want to start him. We want to throw suspicion on him. And like, this is where we want to like turn the story and have that twist. And yeah, like as a viewer who's, went through all of the rest of the show, it's really funny to go back and be like, everyone's suspicious of John. It's like, Space Dad? Everyone's suspicious of Space Dad? Like, he just wants you to do your homework and like achieve your dreams. He's not nefarious. But it is funny, like they really did, like, you watch it and you kind of take away that knowledge of like what the character, who he kind of becomes, especially to these characters later on. And like, he does seem suspicious. He does seem to be doing like weird things and like really kind of building up that suspicion. And if the episodes had been played in order, it would have been that the bomb defusing followed by Eliza being like, that's the guy that your dad went off with him and I never saw him again, kind of thing. And then this episode where he's just kind of wandering around like red-eyed, like, not me.
And he messed with Jeremiah's file and everything is redacted.
Redacted it and deleted it, and like he was the last one in the file. Like, yeah, he seems like a bad dude when you're watching it without the hindsight. It's like, oh my God, like what is he up to? And I really like the way that they like were slowly layering in those pieces of like making you suspicious. And then like, obviously if you're a comic book fan and you know his name, you don't know he's Martian Manhunter yet, and his name's really John Jones. You're like, Hank Henshaw, this dude's gonna be bad.
He's gonna become Cyborg Superman
You're
someday.
Just waiting for that other shoe to drop, pretty much. And I really liked the way that they played with that. I thought that they did a really good job.
And Claudia makes a good point in the chat saying, I love that the rewind episodes have 5 subsequent seasons for additional reference and knowing how things played out. And it's hard. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Morgan, but it's hard to sort of separate what we know later on from trying to analyze the first season, because it's kind of actually neat to go back and rewatch the first season, knowing how things end, to see how they get there. Because even in this episode, even in Red Faced, Kara is wondering if she's ever gonna have it all, if she's ever gonna live a normal life. And that does come back to, I don't know if that's intentional from the showrunners in later seasons to come back and sort of pay that off. But there is an element to season 6 Kara where she wants to have a normal life. She takes off the glasses and wants to live as Kara, not just as Supergirl. So I think that paid off, I think, at the end of the show in some form or fashion. Maybe it was not as masterful as maybe it could have been, but they did attempt to address Kara's struggle with that in season 1. So it's difficult to separate them out a little bit because I'm enjoying making those connections.
Yeah, it is fun when you think about, you watch this episode and then you think about where she ends the show, which is at game night with her friends. I mean, she doesn't have a romantic partner, but she is surrounded by people who know her secret identity and who love her and who accept her. And I think that is sort of a big part of what she's talking about when she sort of has that breakdown with James, is just, I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to be honest with people. I'm always going to have to kind of keep people at arm's distance because they can't ever really, know my secret. And everybody, at that game night knew her secret. And I think that is a nice full circle moment when I look forward to the future of the show. And it's funny because a lot of these episodes, I'll just think, oh, why couldn't it have stayed like good like this? But there are a couple of times where I go, oh, I like that they paid that off. I like that they got there eventually in the show, even though we had to stumble through some whatever the totems were. We did.
What were they? I don't know.
Who knows? No one does. I truly believe no one does.
And speaking about that, where we kind of get some things paid off, Claudia also makes the point saying, I think this episode planted the seed for James's need to eventually become Guardian. Whether or not that was planted in season 1 or not, it does justify it in season 2, where James doesn't think he's special enough. Because even here, General Lane is literally telling him, you are not special enough.
You are not special enough.
So in season 2, when he becomes a superhero, that's his attempt at being special.
Yeah, I noticed that right away as I was watching that scene. I was like, oh, like this is really kind of set up for James's decision to become Guardian. Like whether or not I liked the James Guardian stuff, ultimately, like you can definitely point to this episode and go like, well, here is somebody directly saying, you're not special, just you surround yourself with special people. And you can definitely make a case for James at this moment going like, well, I could be special too. Like I could also, do what they're doing. So, I mean, I do like that, like going back, you can kind of see the beginnings of that Guardian storyline start like this early in the show.
Yeah, so some of that is comes back into play later on in the show. That now that we have the ability to look back from 6 seasons of the series. So Morgan, was there anything that we left out that you wanted to discuss about Red Faced?
I don't think there was much else. I think we kind of hit most of the major points. I did think it was funny that they were like, Alex, Alex has to go and talk to Maxwell Lord. He can help. Like based on what, like just like an episode ago, I guess 2 in the right order.
Yes.
Like he was like blowing things up to test Supergirl's speed. Like what makes you think that he is going to be a good candidate for like figuring out anything? I mean, I do appreciate that she came in with like the arm. She's like, here, what do you think? He's like, it's a robot arm. I don't like, what am I supposed to be thinking?
I was a little confused about, because when Red Tornado comes back and attacks Lucy and General Lane and James, and Supergirl has to fight him, and he unleashes a tornado on the city. Red Tornado has both of his arms.
Yes. Okay. I'm glad that this bothered you too, because I immediately was like, did he grow back the other arm? I guess we're supposed to think that like Dr. Morrow had like spare robot arms and was like,
he was in control
Here
of
you
him.
go, buddy. I'm sorry about your arm.
Well, here's my thing. I guess with Maxwell Lord, I guess they were hard up to find technological people to work on it, but that also doesn't make sense because the military created Red Tornado. Could they not have just accessed Dr. Morrow's files or technology? I don't understand why the military could not do it themselves and they needed Maxwell Lord to help them.
Yeah, it seemed a little weird. It seemed like
it's
a little bit
desperate.
Feels like a little bit of a stretch that they were like, this guy who truly hates Supergirl and is trying to find her weaknesses for some nefarious purpose. Let's ask that guy. I think he's going to help, honestly. Alex is like, listen, I'm not good at this, especially not with men. But I felt like there was a vibe there I think I can exploit. And she shows up and he's like, dinner? She's like, I guess.
I mean, I am hungry and I'm here. I might as well.
One of my favorites is like when Alex walks in, he's like, you look stunning. And she like looks down at her pantsuit, her like standard issue FBI pantsuit. Like, all right, we're pushing it a little. We're laying it on a little thick now, aren't we?
Yeah, he definitely was doing that. Okay, so Maxwell Lord helping out the DO when he can, showing that he is something of a shade of gray character, I guess. He's kind of the bad guy, but also helping to prove that he can be a good guy as well. So Morgan, any other thoughts? Do you have some overall thoughts about this episode?
Yeah, I really liked this one. As we're going back to season 1, I'm just remembering how much I liked this show when it first premiered and how good the writing was and the performances and even the budget. Let's be honest, the budget was really good. Like all those scenes are like so crisp and bright. Oh, all the money they had then. Red Tornado looked great. I mean, he looked like a guy in a suit, but like a robot-y guy in a suit.
Yeah.
He pulled it off. I feel like in the later seasons he would have looked like a video game character from like a cutscene, and I kind of appreciate like, listen, we can suspend our disbelief. Like, put a real actor in a suit. Like, it doesn't have to be this weird CGI monstrosity. Like, I feel like Red Tornado had some emotion to him because he was played by an actual human being. And I just really like the way that they tied into the anger and the way that they really tied into Kara's character and like how she was feeling about things and her character progression, and even like with the romantic triangle that I don't care that much about, but how that impacts Kara, I do care about. And I think that they did a good job of showing, the anger behind the anger, as Kat said. And I think there are a lot of really good scenes for Kara in this episode. That scene with Kat, I think, was really good. The scene with James, where she's punching a car. How cool is that? I thought that was really good. I just think that they overall did a really good job in this episode of like highlighting, some of the things that make Supergirl, like that, that trauma that she has and that anger that she has to get over, and the way that people kind of expect her to take all their crap essentially and do it smiling. And like sometimes she doesn't, want to have to deal with the guys who are about to run over a bunch of school kids and like be nice to them. And I think that there is kind of this assumption that like, yeah, she's going to do it all with a smile, but like that gets her down. And I like that we got to see that side of Supergirl.
She almost did like break that dude's hand or whatever.
He did step to her.
She could have handled that a little better, but she's
with a little bit more grace. But
she's having to learn how to do that as Supergirl, which is understandable. But yeah, you can definitely tell they had more of a budget because they could afford all of that red makeup.
So much red makeup.
So much red.
in a few seasons, they won't have that kind of makeup budget anymore, and Jesse Rath will be excited about that.
He will just be image-inducing for the remainder of the series. We do not
he's
have
like,
green makeup for him.
green, blue, no more.
Well, before we end our discussion, just going to hit some things in the chat. New Rachel says, if you're looking for a heroic red tornado versus the evil one that we see in Red Faced, she recommends season 1 of Young Justice, as Morgan mentioned, and the episodes Invasion of the Secret Santas and Hail the Tornado Tyrant of Batman, the Brave and the Bold. So if you want some red tornado, that's a good one to go by. And let's see. And then New Rachel also says, always be sad that we never get to see a Superwoman storyline, since this General Lane would definitely give his daughter superpowers. Yeah. Oh, man, that would have been so good to see all of that, because I actually really liked General Lane as played by Glenn Morshower. I interviewed him way back in the day. And Morgan, just to interrupt myself, can you find that comment from New Rachel? I got rid of it and now I can't remove it from the live stream.
Oh,
so
of course.
while I tell my Glenn Morshower story. But I did interview him at Pensacon. And he's like the coolest guy. Like he's very motivational as a human being. He's a really good actor. And he was really nice to me, even though I only had a few minutes with him. So if you want to hear more of Glenn Morshower and his thoughts on General Lane, we do have a short interview with him on Supergirl Radio, one of our early episodes. And I think that episode also has most of his panel at Pensacon, which was just it was one of the best celebrity panels that I have ever attended, just because he's such a good guy. And he's one of the forgotten of Supergirl that I wish had not been forgotten, because I think he would have done a really good job of continuing that character on. So if you want to hear more of him and his perspective on the General Lane character, definitely go give that a listen. All right. Well, I think that's kind of pretty much going to do it on our thoughts on Red Face, and more so Morgan's thoughts on Red Face, since Morgan did not get to share her thoughts initially. So I'm glad to get your perspective on this early episode of Supergirl and the introduction and demise of Red Tornado, and how the show is starting to thread some storylines throughout the season. So I guess we have to get back to the future, because we've been in 2015. We need to get back into 2022. So I guess we should travel back to the future, and then we'll continue on with our episode when we get there. Okay, now
it's rough being back in 2022. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, now we're back. Now we're back from the past and in the future. So I didn't get a chance to because of my DragonCon weekend exploits. I didn't get a chance to come up with some snap judgments. Although, Morgan, if you have any off the top of your head, you're welcome to share them. But we do have one from the chat. And if you're in the chat with us right now, feel free to drop some snap judgments as we go. But I guess let's go ahead and make a snap judgment, since we do have a listener submitted one. In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended and explanations are unnecessary. All right, so we do have a snap judgment from Donna. So Morgan, do you want to get into this?
Of course. Okay, snap judgment. Where is it harder to get a good night's sleep? College or DragonCon?
Oh, DragonCon for sure. Because at least with college, you can miss a class if you need to. Like you could kind of skip one. But DragonCon, if you sleep in, you're gonna miss all the fun stuff. So I think that's what I would say. I guess, Morgan, for your answer, I guess you can apply that to San Diego Comic-Con if you needed to, since you have not yet been to DragonCon.
I've never been to DragonCon, but I have certainly been to Comic-Con. And I'd say Comic-Con is harder to get to sleep.
Yeah, it's very difficult with
There's
those.
just always stuff happening, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot going on. Dr. Nicole Green in the chat asks practical effects or CGI. So Morgan, what's your call there? Which do you prefer?
I'm a practical effects girl all the way. I don't want to see CGI. Give me the puppet version of Baby Yoda. That's why he's so cute. He's got a little soul in there. I love the Muppets. I think a good practical effect. It just looks better. It looks better.
You don't need CGI to make Kermit the Frog ride a bicycle.
You don't.
Somebody can figure that out. Be creative.
Feet on the pedals.
That's like the most magical thing I can think of. It's like, how did they do that? And I think I know the answer. It's like some big like a truck thing that had a bunch of wires, and they had to I think that's how they did that. But it's just the most magical thing when you see it on the screen. It's like, how Kermit the Frog is riding a bicycle. How would you? Nowadays they would just do it as CGI, but back then somebody was like, I want to figure this out. How do I make Kermit the Frog ride a bicycle?
And they figured it out.
Let's figure this out. They figured it out. And back in like the 80s too. They did not give up until they made Kermit the Frog ride a bicycle. I would probably say practical effects. If I had to pick one, which is part of the game. So I would probably pick practical effects. But I also don't dismiss CGI when it is useful. I watched the Industrial Light and Magic documentary on Disney Plus, which is a HBO Max competitor, but still good. There's still a good streaming platform. If you have not watched the Industrial Light and Magic, I think it's called Light and Magic is the documentary. It's a 6-episode documentary series. Highly recommend it. It shows the evolution of special effects from the practical effect with the stop motion and the modeling and the camera work into the CGI aspect, where they were starting to incorporate some of those more computer generated images into what they were doing. It's just the most fascinating story. And so I have a lot of respect for both sides of the effect industry. I think they go best when they go together.
I agree. Yeah, there's been some beautiful CGI stuff done in the past. So yeah, I think they are better together.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to rely too much on CGI though. I know the new Lord of the Rings TV series costs what, $500 million an episode or something crazy. It's like,
I think it was like $1 billion. You know what? I feel like some of that was maybe just filming on location though. I watched the first episode and it is very, very pretty. I was like, oh, that's some nice scenery. That's a field I want to frolic through.
Some of that though, you could maybe not have to spend.
Like you could scale
billions
back
of dollars.
a little bit. Maybe throw some of that money to Wheel of Time. They're just trying their best, guys. They didn't get $1 billion.
Yeah, so I think it's best when done well and with thinking about the budget.
Yeah. You maybe might not want to blast that budget out to $1 million, to a cool $1 billion.
To a cool $1 billion. All right. Well, I think that is gonna take us out of Snap Judgment. No judgments on your Snap Judgments. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio Rewind as we went back into the past to look at the episode from season 1 titled Red Faced. Well, now we need to get to some Supergirl Radio and some DCTV podcast plugs. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW's Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Supergirl Radio, Superman and Lois Radio, The Flash Podcast, and Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, Black Lightning Podcast, Batwoman Podcast 2, and Titans and Doom Patrol Podcast just for you. Justice League Dark Podcast, Green Lantern Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Strange Adventures Podcast, and finally my favorite of the bunch, DC TV After Dark, where you're allowed to say fuck.
And since this episode featured Red Tornado, we have Red Tornado designs in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store that we would like to suggest.
This is the perfect time to grab that Red Tornado merch, since everybody is nostalgic for a Red Tornado in season 1 of Supergirl. So we have lots of Red Tornado. There's actually lots of Red Tornado designs on the TeePublic store.
Good for him.
Yeah. So if you're a big fan of the Justice League and of Red Tornado, pick up some cool stuff. We've got mugs and t-shirts, hoodies, all kinds of things. So definitely go and check that out. And I just wanted to address something that was in the live chat. So Daryl says we missed feedback. So Daryl, I apologize, but because of my Dragon Con weekend, I've just had a lot going on. Didn't get a chance to get the doc put together. So we'll get all the feedback and all of the news that we wanted to cover this week, and we'll do that in our next episode of Supergirl Radio when we have more time to get those things put together. So my apologies. That's on me. Just some things going on in my life. And so we'll get to that stuff at a later date. But your feedback has not been forgotten. We just didn't get a chance to address it in this episode. So please stay with us and we ask for your patience and your forgiveness on that. We also would like to remind everyone that we are currently running a new DC TV Podcast Plugs contest. So if you are interested in participating in that, and we hope that you do, because Morgan doesn't want to do the plugs anymore.
Sure don't.
Yeah. So here's some details on how you can participate.
Supergirl Radio needs new DC TV podcast plugs, which means that we are holding another plugs contest, and we invite you to submit your recordings of how you would promote the DC TV podcast on Supergirl Radio. We want you to do that so that I do not have to do that. It's very important that you do it so I don't have to. You can be as creative as you want to be, but we do have one requirement, and that's that you need to make sure you mention all of our podcasts in the DC TV Podcast Network. And in case maybe you have forgotten what those are, I will list them like so. That's Supergirl Radio. That's the one that you're listening to right now. The Flash Podcast, Legends of Tomorrow Podcast. I hear that one's really great.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. The Lituation Room, DC on HBO Max Podcast, which maybe one day will be sponsored by HBO Max. HBO Max, where I like to watch stuff. The Stargirl Podcast, Superman and Lois Radio. They're not in the Arrowverse, but we're still allowing them to be on the network. What a ring that probably threw them for, where they're like, excuse me, we're not in the Arrowverse. Green Lantern Podcast, the Sandman Podcast, Justice League Dark Podcast, and DC TV After Dark.
I hear that one's pretty good too.
That one's fine. That one's fine. That one I think is still being workshopped. So how do you get on Supergirl Radio? What you do is you email an MP3, a WAV, or an M4A to supergirlradio@gmail.com by our contest deadline, which is September 30th. We will choose the winner, and the winner will receive a prize in the mail, which will consist of Superman Family Adventures, Volume 1, DC Super Pets, Superpowered Pony, which is a story about Comet the Super Horse, and maybe also an additional surprise.
We might sneak something that you didn't expect in there.
Just might.
Yeah, so we hope that you want to participate in our plugs contest so that we can feature you on the podcast and give you some cool free stuff. And on that note, we'd also like to thank our legion of super sponsors for supporting Supergirl Radio through our Patreon. And if you would like to participate in doing that, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. So we'd like to give it a shout out to Michael, Sam, Anne-Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Leslie, Abby, Irmgard, Miriam, Nicole, Lizeth, Faith, Brian, Ethan, and Danny. So we really appreciate all of your support. And if you would like to follow me and keep up with what I'm doing, there's several ways you can do that. I'm on a social media platform called Vero, which I like because you get to share things you're watching and listening to and reading. If you read books, that's difficult for me. But it's also a place where I like to share pictures if I'm practicing photography, which I did quite a bit of at DragonCon this past weekend. Some friends of mine are really good cosplayers. Check them out on Instagram at Mirror Bright Cosplay. They let me stick a camera in their face for a little bit during the weekend, so that was a lot of fun. So you can check my photography out on Vero at Derby Kid and on Instagram at the Derby Kid. That's where I post pictures every now and then, a little video. And then you can follow me and subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod, where right now I'm doing film analysis and looking at Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice critical reception reviews from the top critics of Rotten Tomatoes. So if you're interested in learning how to review films, we'll go on that journey together, because mostly I'm looking at how not to review films. So if you want to do that, I gather at Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod, and we can be live together and read through the reviews and see what we think about them. So that is a couple ways. Those are a couple ways that you can keep up with me. And I did see a question from Daryl in the chat asking, since you went to DragonCon, what panel was Brianna Vinskus supposed to do? That's a great question, Daryl. I have no idea. I cannot answer that for you because I did not see Brianna there. I believe Brianna was there. Brianna was Agent Vasquez on Supergirl. So I wanted to run into her, but I just didn't get a chance to. Sometimes there are things going on. It's funny. I fill up my entire schedule in the DragonCon app for the entire weekend, and then most of it I have to throw away because other things come up, or I'm hanging out with my friends, or something else. So unfortunately, I did not get around to doing that. Daryl says she was on the cancellation list. Oh, well then I didn't miss her at all. So I feel better. I feel better about that. So yeah, I don't know what she was there to represent, but I know her from Supergirl. So that's all I would have known her for. I did get to meet Connor Leslie though, so that was really fun. So if you like Donna Troy on Titans, I had a little interaction with her. It was like the best part of my weekend. And I'm not normally like a celebrity person anymore. Now I've been going to DragonCon for like 14 years. I'm like, famous people. I've seen them all. and this year I was like, oh my God, I got to meet Donna Troy. So that's pretty fun. So but if you do have questions, Daryl, about the DragonCon schedule, you can go into the download the DragonCon app. That should still be in there. So if you wanted to check that out, you can do so. Morgan, tell us about yourself and how we can keep up with you.
Well, I'm a Cancer and I like long walks on the beach. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic. You can also find me as a co-host on DC TV After Dark, where we're like in the beginning stages of planning an episode. I'm not
Oh.
promising anything, but again, subscribe to the feed, and then when it pops up, you'll be like, cool, and we'll be like, oh yeah, that thing. And I'm also a co-host on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast, where I think my vacation has kind of messed up our schedule a little bit because I'm off next week to Disney World, and so I think that is pushing back our Wheel of Time episode, where I make Kat and Amy watch Wheel of Time with me, and then Mike joins us. If Kat doesn't like it, there might be a fight, so it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be contentious, I think, because Wheel of Time is Mike's favorite thing, and Kat doesn't love high fantasy. So, so we're gonna see if we can talk her around. But I think that's gonna end up being a little bit closer to the end of the month, probably around the week of the 22nd. So if you have it on your calendars, move it. It was supposed to be this week, but I don't think we're going to get to it. So we are looking forward to doing that. And then I don't really know. I think we had a couple ideas about the next couple episodes, but we're still trying to figure out what do we do with what do we become? We're kind of like we haven't become the butterfly yet. We're still sort of in the cocoon. So we're gonna break free soon, but not quite yet. We thought we'd have more time to figure that out, but the CW had other ideas.
That is okay. Well, I look forward to whatever butterfly comes out of that. It'll be a beautiful, beautiful butterfly, I'm sure. But that is all very exciting. And when you were explaining who you are, when I asked you about it, it reminded me my brother is a marketing professor, and so one of the things that he does is that he tries to teach his students how to be professionals. And so one of the things that he has done with his program is that he has these sort of seminars where he calls it "Tell Me About Yourself." And so the thing is he'll have a student come up to a professional, kind of like in a speed dating sort of situation, and then the professional will say, "Well, tell me about yourself." And so the student is then forced to tell them about it, because that's hard. That's hard for people.
You know what? It is a good life skill that I think bears out a lot. Like, the more interviews that you have to go on, the better you get at that professional tell me about yourself, like 1 or 2 liners. And then you do get kind of thrown off when somebody doesn't have that ready, doesn't have that in the chamber. I remember one time there was somebody new to where I was working, and we were having a one-on-one. I was like, "Oh, so tell me about yourself." And the guy was so unprepared. He already had the job somehow, and he was like, I don't know what to tell you about myself. I was like, really, sir, it's just like one sentence. How do you not have this prepared?
Just tell me anything.
So I will say that is an important one. Your brother is right. That's a really important one, because I was immediately ooh, that's not very impressive.
Well, to your credit, you had something ready to go. You started telling me about yourself.
You.
That should be a test that we both go through, to have to tell each other about ourselves. That might be hard, because it would be hard to explain about me to Morgan, because Morgan has been podcasting with me for so long. I'm pretty sure Morgan can tell me about
Rebecca
myself.
Johnson.
I'm pretty sure Morgan can tell me about myself.
We get really deep. We're just both crying. It's not professional anymore. Tell me about your childhood trauma.
So, good life skill to learn. Well, I think on that note, that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. Hopefully you've learned something a little bit about us and about Supergirl in your time with us in your earbuds. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And thanks for joining us for Supergirl Radio Rewind.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that. So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Is Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No. Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.